Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring the absolute most famous, and let's be real, probably the most misunderstood, avant-garde masterpiece ever created. We're talking about a musical composition that has literally sparked outrage, inspired massive campaigns, and completely flipped the very definition of art on its head.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. Picture this. A performer walks onto a stage at a summer music festival. He sits down at a grand piano, closes the keyboard lid, and then does absolutely nothing. Just sits there while the audience totally squirms in their seats. This is exactly what went down at the premiere of John Cage's 433 back in August 1952. The pianist, David Tudor, simply sat there. Didn't strike a single key. After a bit, he briefly opened the lid, then closed it again. He repeated this whole process until exactly 4 minutes and 33 seconds had passed. And then, he just walked off the stage. People were completely baffled. Some were genuinely furious. A lot of folks thought they'd just been the victims of some ridiculous stunt.
But here's where it gets wild. There's a massive contrast between the popular myth that this piece is just an empty prank about silence and the profound reality of what it actually is. It's an invitation to listen to environmental sound. You see, the piece isn't empty at all, not even a little bit. Drawing heavily from his studies of Zen Buddhism in the late 1940s, Cage actually wanted to eliminate the duality between the composer's ego and the external world. He wanted the audience to realize that the accidental, ambient noises floating around the room were just as musically valid and honestly just as interesting as the notes played on a piano.
Part 1. The Quest for True Silence. Let's trace John Cage's unexpected and, frankly, fascinating journey to find absolute quiet. Like, how does a respected composer, a guy who studied under Arnold Schoenberg, decide to write a piece of music with literally no notes?
Well, Cage's quest actually kicked off back in 1948, starting with a very relatable desire. He wanted to mute annoying corporate background music. You know, music. It was being piped into offices, restaurants, subways, you name it. And musicians of Cage's generation were absolutely horrified by it. They saw it as forced listening. So Cage originally wanted to write a silent piece called Silent Prayer and pitch it to the Muzak Corporation to give people a 4.5-minute break. But that idea evolved in a huge way when, in 1951, he visited an anechoic chamber at Harvard University. This was a room built entirely out of sound-deadening materials, perfectly designed to absorb all echoes and be absolutely 100% silent.
But here is the crazy part. Inside Harvard's perfectly soundproof chamber, Cage realized that true silence doesn't actually exist. While he was in that room, he heard two distinct sounds, one high and one low. When he asked the engineer in charge what was going on, the guy gave him a shocking explanation. Our own living bodies generate noise. The high sound was his nervous system operating, and the low sound was literally his blood circulating. Wow, right? This was a massive revelation for Cage. He realized that as long as we're alive, there will always be sound. Trying to create absolute silence was just a physical impossibility.
Moving on to part 2, 3 movements of nothing. So, knowing that true silence was a total illusion, Cage went ahead and composed his masterpiece with mathematical precision rather than just pure randomness.
Look at how this is broken down. The performer actually uses a stopwatch to rigorously time 3 distinct movements of nothing. It completely proves this is a highly composed structure. Cage didn't just guess. He determined these exact timings using a chance method based on the ancient Chinese oracle, the I Ching. By tossing coins, he generated the specific lengths of silence and added them all together. The performer's job is to sit there and use the piano lid as a visual frame. They close it to begin a movement and open it to end one, marking out the exact durations, 33 seconds, 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Now back to that 1952 premiere at the outdoor Maverick Concert Hall in Woodstock, New York, the audience totally missed the point. They completely failed to realize that the wind, the rain, and their own angry footsteps were actually the music. Cage later explicitly pointed out that the sounds of the wind stirring in the first movement, the raindrops pattering on the roof in the second, and the people muttering and stomping out in the third, that was the true sonic content of the piece. The audience was providing the music without even realizing it.
Which brings us to part 3. Death metal, cats, and charts. Since that pretty chaotic premiere, this piece has been embraced by pop culture in some wonderfully absurd ways.
Because the piece just requires a frame of attention, literally anyone, or anything, can perform it. We've got a wildly diverse history of performances that proves just how universally accessible 443 really is.
I mean, we have Eurovision artist Tommy Cash performing it while casually sipping coffee and ignoring a squeaking piano bench. We have the Austrian death metal band Dead Territory letting their massive amplifier feedback ring out during the silence. There's the BBC Symphony Orchestra, where the audience's coughing actually becomes part of the art. And honestly, my favorite, Nola the Acrocat. Yes, a literal cat performing it on late-night television. It just goes to show that taking a breath and just listening is a completely universal concept. It even inspired a massive UK campaign in 2010 to beat Simon Cowell's Pop Stars for the Christmas #1 spot. Dubbed Cage Against the Machine, this incredible grassroots movement aimed to get a recording of 443 to the top of the charts as a protest against manufactured pop music. Dozens of famous musicians literally phoned in their silence for the recording. And get this, miraculously, this track of pure ambient room noise actually reached number 21 on the British pop charts. No way, right?
But the real magic happened when campaigners debuted the silent track in a packed London nightclub at midnight. The DJ just killed the music right as the clock struck 12. Obviously, the clubgoers were furious at first, shouting and demanding the music back. But a couple of minutes in, a shift happened. The room settled. People started whispering. Without even asking to be a part of an avant-garde performance, that initially angry crowd eventually settled into a profoundly shared, mindful experience. They became intensely aware of their environment and each other.
And that leads perfectly into part 4, how to listen to everything. This is exactly why understanding this piece matters so much in our increasingly noisy modern world.
You see, 433 isn't just some quirky historical event. It's an incredible tool for awareness. The true genius of the piece is that it acts as a frame. It turns the chaotic background noise of your daily life into a focused, mindful meditation. Think of it like this. Just like a blank white canvas in a museum makes you look at the space it occupies, the designated time frame of 433 forces your brain to organize and appreciate the sounds you'd normally just tune out. The hum of your air conditioner, a car driving by outside, the rustle of your own clothes. When you frame these sounds within a dedicated block of time, they transform. They go from mere noise into an intricate, endlessly unique symphony.
As Cage so beautifully stated in a 1991 interview, you really don't need a melody to speak to you. There is absolute magnificence in just listening to the vibration of life going on around you. He noted that when he listened to traffic, he loved the activity of the sound, getting louder, quieter, higher, lower. He didn't need it to form a traditional musical sentence. He just appreciated the physical reality of the sound waves interacting with his ears.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final challenge. Take the next 4.5 minutes to put down your screen, close your eyes, and just listen to the room around you. Remember, there is no such thing as silence, which means there is always music waiting to be heard. What will your personal masterpiece sound like today?